We're delighted to have Gaye Godkin with us this morning. As a public health nutritionist, Gaye's work involves the examination of the role of nutrition and lifestyle behaviours in the manifestation of illness. Today, Gaye will educate us on the most up-to-date evidence-based scientific nutritional information available, enabling us to explore how to improve our diet and behaviours. She's going to talk for about 40 minutes, so if you've got any questions, keep them in mind and she'll take them at the very end. So without further ado, Gaye.
Thanks, Paul. Well, thank you all for coming out this morning. It's a great turnout and I really appreciate it. So the focus of the talk this morning, as Paul said, my work involves the examination of diet and behaviours and its association with health outcomes. My journey began in County Wexford and I moved to Dublin when I was 17, and when I came to Dublin I developed a chronic illness, asthma, largely due at the time to the smog, and Mary Harney in her wisdom brought in the smoking ban, which was a fantastic idea. But however, I developed chronic asthma, which I had gone to all sorts of doctors, GPs, consultants, gone everywhere, and the message was more inhalers and more drugs, and I was becoming worse and worse. I was very fortunate to meet Dr. Nancy Dunn, who was a medical doctor who had given up her path with the medical community and gone out and studied nutritional medicine. And I had some food intolerances done in London at the time, and I had 3 issues with food. Once I removed those foods from my diet, my asthma was cured, and I have never used an inhaler or taken a pill since. So I know firsthand that this works. At that stage I was married and I had my good office job and my kids and what have you, which I had to stay there. I then went on to become a merchant banker. I'm not allowed to say I was in the area of regulatory. So I always knew I was going to get back to nutrition. I came from a food background. My grandfather had a poultry business and my mother made baked bread for all the shops in the town. So in 2005, I left the world of regulatory and went back to study. And then in 2009, Professor Patrick Ball introduced the first Masters in Public Health Nutrition in Ireland, and I took it up, and here I am today. Firstly, I'd like to say to you all, man is what he eats, what he drinks, but mostly what he thinks. And I'd like you to bear in mind that during the presentation. Okay, so what's your most valuable asset? For most people, it's their money. Are there investments? Well, I hope it's not investments in Ireland at the moment. Or your home, your pension, or your car. For lots of people, it's their career, if they're lucky enough now to have a job. But your most valuable asset is your mental and your physical health. So what is health? In 1948, the World Health Organization came up with what they saw health to be. It's a state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and it's not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. And how many people can actually say they're in a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being? They went on further to have the Ottawa Charter in 1996, and the Irish government and lots of governments signed up to this. There were also lots of communities and organisations, because they decided at that stage, listen, health is actually an economic good. You know, let's get away from the disease-based model. So here are the fundamental principles of where health was going in 1996. Building healthy public policies. Create supportive healthy environments. Strengthen community action. Get everybody on board. Let's get healthy. Develop personal skills. And reorientating the healthcare services towards prevention and promotion of health. And I think that's the most important one. The prevention and the promotion of health. So this is our current minister. I tend to refer to this Minister, James Riley, as the Minister for Illness. Because in Ireland, if you if you look and you listen to the language we all use around health, it is all illness and disease based. You turn on the radio every day of the week and it's medical cards, it's bed blockers, it's social insurance. I would pose the question to James Riley, what part of health does he represent? And this is what James Riley had to say at a recent World Health Organization conference about health in Ireland. Chronic illness accounts for 86% of deaths on this island. 77% of the overall disease burden, and up to 70% of our healthcare costs, our resources, are used up in chronic illness. 80% of all GP and hospital visits are related to chronic illness. And what is this cause? This is an epidemic. If you remember the swine flu, the vaccinations, the millions that were spent on that. And it was all for what? The swine flu never really happened. There was such an outcry. Vaccinations had to be got into the country. We have an epidemic here at the moment. And what's the number one cause? Lifestyle. And this is according to James Riley. So what is a chronic illness? Well, a chronic illness is something there is no cure for. Medical science has made huge progress. The invention of the antibiotic to kill TB. If you're a woman in the 1900s living in Ireland, the worst thing you could do was become pregnant. Chances were you were going to die, your baby was going to die. Antibiotics. You go to a GP tomorrow, you have a chest infection, you're going to be treated. You go with a chronic illness and you're going to be told you've got to manage that. You've got to live with that. You've got to take these pills and you can't come off them. The recent convention in the Aviva Stadium on managing chronic illness in primary care by the GPs, organised by the HSE, all of the language used around that was managing chronic illness. Prevention wasn't discussed. How are we going to manage this tsunami that's hitting us at the moment? So chronic illness is cancer, heart disease, high blood pressure, asthma, arthritis, osteoporosis, obesity, and the list goes on. Are there pills for these things? Well, in many cases they're not. If you've type 2 diabetes, you will be given medication which will lower your blood sugars to a maximum of 10%. If you've type 2 diabetes, you cannot reverse it unless you adopt a healthy diet and an exercise regime. So the lifestyle choices that we make, that us humans make, that is driving this epidemic: poor diet, obesity, stress, smoking, alcohol, recreational drugs, and inactivity. Heart disease, which I'll talk about. Obesity, I'll talk about. Type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is going to, by 2020, it is going to take over the resources of the health system worldwide. Depression, I'm going to go into that, and cancer. 40 to 60% of cancers are preventable through diet. It's a shocking statistic. Musculoskeletal, this covers arthritis, osteoporosis, and all those kind of muscular bone issues. Over 900,000 people in Ireland has an arthritic condition. And look at the size of our population. All preventable. Fertility. When I went to school in County Wexford, there was a girl who sat beside me. I was only thinking about this last night. She was 1 of 13. We were 1 of 4. Most of my class were 1 of 9, 16, 13, 11, 10. Irish people had babies to beat the band. And where are we now? 1 in 6 Irish couples have a fertility issue. I do quite a lot of work with the Sims Fertility Clinic. I'm running a lecture series for them at the moment on diet and nutrition. And it is their first point of call when they're dealing with fertility. Look at your diet, number 1. And then malnutrition in the elderly. Believe it or not, it's costing more than the obesity epidemic. It doesn't even hit the radar. So, the world's number 1 cause of death is still heart disease. And what we're seeing now is, in the developing countries, heart disease is emerging. The primary cause is inflammation. Now, I don't have time to go into the whole area of inflammation. You're going to hear so much more about inflammatory conditions driven by diet. Depression and heart disease are first cousins. It's the #1 killer of Irish women. An Irish woman is 7 times more likely to die from a cardiovascular event than she is from breast cancer. 7 times. In 2010, in fact, more Irish women died of heart disease than men for the first time ever. It's kind of a disease that we always associate with the middle-aged man, pain in the chest, out playing golf, drops. Women don't get that warning. It's just lights out. Sorry. Dr. Dent here. So is it all genetic? Well, this is an area I'm going to talk to you about this morning, the whole area of the genes. This is just a little study. It's not a little study, it's a big study. I'd just like to share it with you. The World Health Organization commissioned an intercontinental study. So every continent in the world is involved in this. 7 million people. And they decided that they were going to look at what is the main driving factor for heart disease. And of course the drugs companies were all there, yes, we're going to be cholesterol, we're going to be able to sell more statins. And much to their disappointment, the #1 driver of heart disease within 7 million people across the world was psychosocial factors. That simply means stress. Depression induced by stress is the #1 cause of heart disease. And if you have a depression for longer than 3 months, which is not treated, you have a greater risk of developing a heart attack in the next 3 months. And that is how serious depression and heart disease is. So this is our friend, the New European. And this is the new term, obesity. The World Health Organization has its headquarters in Geneva. On the first floor, they have historically had the admin team, dealing with malnutrition in the world. And we have 1 billion people going to bed hungry every night. And on the third floor, they have a new team dealing with the obesity epidemic. And this is now nearly hitting 1.5 billion. So we have 1 billion starving and 1 billion overfed. As they say, the world is badly divided. So are we immune in Ireland? The direct cost of obesity is 1.1 billion. The indirect cost is 2.7. To employers, the cost of obesity in Ireland is 728 million. 728 million. And if you think it's as simple as eat less and move more, it's simply not. Dieting is the most fantastic failure. If you want to make money, write diet books. Because 99% of people who diet will fail. So how do we behave in Ireland? But this is us. You go out on a Thursday or Friday night to anywhere in Dublin, and we're all up for the laugh and we're all up for the crack. So is it good crack or is it health damaging behaviour? Well, I'll let you make your own mind up on that one, depending on the day. Okay, so this is the stress epidemic that Time magazine warned was coming down the line. And I think stress, like obesity, they're words that are just bandied around. People just bandy these words around. It means absolutely nothing. But in actual fact, we all have a relationship with stress. Every person in this room has a relationship with stress. What we don't know is how to manage it and how to deal with it. And most importantly, we do not appreciate or understand the physiological effects that stress has on your body. Now, stress is a positive thing. So if we hadn't got stressed, we would be up here this morning. We'd be all lying in the bed like that. God, it's grand, you know. Why would you bother getting up? Smoke another joint. But, you know, we need to get up. We need to get get going. When we get up in the morning, our stress hormones are raised. Cortisol and adrenaline, they're the guys that kick us. And then as we go to bed at night, we have a thing in the body called the circadian rhythm, which regulates all of our hormones. So you're high in the morning and then you should be going down like that at night. Most people are high and never going down. Now, we have a stress system within us that we need to survive. So years ago when the hunter-gatherer was out there with his bow and arrow and he had to kill that animal to bring him home to feed the village, he needed stress, he needed adrenaline, he needed the blood to pump to his arms and his legs so he could run away from that animal. When you're sitting in a traffic jam or you've had a row with your wife or you're ready to kill your boss or your employee or whoever, you're getting the same effect as that hunter-gatherer. Your blood pressure is going to the roof, your heart is pounding, digestion stops, reproduction stops. When I see people on a one-to-one basis with fertility issues, I say, stop stressing. You're never going to get there. Adrenaline is toxic to the body. Cortisol makes you fat. It kills your neurotransmitters. It deletes your memory. Stress hormones are toxic. It's a health-damaging behavior. And I would say to everybody in this room, stress is an internal job. It is our perception. And it is our stress response. We're never going to get away from stress. But it's how we respond to stress. So what's your stress response? That's a question you might think about, because it's well worth thinking about it. 1 in 4 Irish people has a mental health issue. 1 in 4 of us. And the single biggest component there is stress. Winding ourselves up. Listen to your internal dialogue. Okay, so the real challenge going forward is brain health. This is the biggest European challenge. So the mental health bill in the UK is 77 billion. It's greater than heart disease and depression combined. A lifestyle behaviour. Dementia is to triple in Ireland. I mean, years ago, these diseases, they're now called these Western lifestyle diseases, simply didn't exist. What are we thinking? So this is our ageing population, and this is another huge challenge at the moment in Ireland, and this is based on 2010 statistics. 5 people are working to every 1 over 65. Now, I'm not quite sure if that's true from 2011 with the job losses and things like that, but certainly going forward by 2030, there will be only 3 people working to 1 over 65. So how are we going to afford that? Well, we're going to afford it fine if we can keep our over 65s healthy. Easy. But the way we're all going, by the time we're going to be 65, it's not going to be so easy. Okay, so that's the end of Dr. Death. It lightens up from here on in, so you can all smile. So is it all genetic? And this is an area of huge interest in. So these 2 boys were in power, Tony Blair and Bill Clinton, when the human genome was sequenced and unraveled. And they got together and they said, look, let's have a look and see how many genes are in the body. And we're going to sort out all illnesses. We're going to see that's the gene for cancer and that's the gene for heart disease. Sorted. So in 2000, they had sequenced the human genome. And they were really, really surprised because the genome was very small. So what's the difference between Mr. Bean and his friend across the way? Very little. Mr. Bean has 25,000 genes in his body. The earthworm has 19,000. Very, very little. So is it all really genetic? Wouldn't it be great to say, oh well, you know, heart disease in my family, it doesn't matter, I smoke 45s a day, but you look, my father died at 50, and I'm going to die anyway. She said, no point. Why would you give them up now? You know, I like smoking. I always had a pint of Guinness. Sure, like my father died of it. Is it? Well, I'm sorry to say it's absolutely not. Your genes do not define you. So this is the area now that we're looking at called epigenetics. Simply means the environment in which your genes are bathed. Okay? So, if I come into this room and the lights are not on, I turn on the switch. It's exactly the same with your genes. You have your mother's genes and your father's genes and your grannies and your uncles and all the people you don't like in your family. They're still in your genetic makeup. But they're not switched on until you engage in either good behaviours around health or bad behaviours. And in Ireland, because we all look around us, we all look alike. We're all from the same genetic pool. We have the highest incidence of genetic diseases and autoimmunity in Ireland, simply because we're all from the same pool. So genetics loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger. And I won't have time to go into the Barker theory, but just to say to you that during the Dutch famine, all the women that were pregnant and all those babies that were subsequently born, there's a huge epidemiological study that followed those babies into their 50s and 60s. And what they found was the malnourishment of the mother had such a profound effect on the fetus that their incidence and prevalence of chronic illness such as heart disease, high blood pressure, was dramatically higher than the rest of the population. Now they've extrapolated that out into several other populations. For example, the Okanagan people, they live longer than anybody else in the world. So you live at least to be 100, maybe 120. They don't have cancers, you know, heart disease. They don't have the other diseases. However, when the next generation moves to America and starts to eat the American diet, these diseases start. So this is called epigenetics. And this, once they unraveled the human genome, they found that certain foods were actually affecting your DNA. And I'll just tell you, in Ireland, about 38% of us has what we call a polymorphism. It's a kind of a default on a particular gene that requires us to eat more folate. Now, folate it's a B vitamin, and it comes from greenery. And when you think of where we all come from, the Green Island, and that's why we have higher rates of things like homocysteine and spina bifida and that kind of thing. So the future for nutrition is in the whole area of nutrigenomics, epigenetics, and an area of particular is the fats, the lipidomics. Okay, so these are our choices when we get up in the morning. We're all faced with what's good for you and what's bad for you. And nutritional advice in Ireland. We do not have a national nutrition plan. We do not have a national nutrition policy. The Obesity Task Force report was commissioned, I think, 2005, is yet to be implemented, and unfortunately now it's out of date. And when we get a national nutrition plan, it's not good enough and it's not going to work, because one size will not fit the whole population. So what an 80-year-old woman needs to be eating is so much different from a 5-year-old child, a pregnant woman, a 60-year-old. So we need, across the life course, we need good, sound nutritional advice. So where is the consumer getting this information from? Well, it's getting it from the television and the radio and the papers. I say to people when they come to say, well, I eat a very healthy diet. I said, okay, I eat X, Y, and Z, and why do you think that's it? Well, it was on the telly. It was on the telly, that's good for you. I said, okay. So this is the dilemma. So one day it's very good, it's safe. Or you can even use that, buckets of that. And the next day it's very bad, it's dangerous. And actually what I'm hearing a lot from people at the moment, I don't know where it's coming from, bananas. Can you overdose on bananas? You know, no. And I heard now, and it brings me back to a funny story, because one of my most rewarding, I suppose, assignments was working in a drug treatment centre. I taught a FOSS course. It was a 12-week. It was a 6-week. They extended it to 12. And And these were people who were methadone users and they were coming off heroin. And of course, when I met them first, they had a complete disconnect from food, completely disassociated, couldn't eat. And as the time went on, engaged them and got them eating. And I used to focus in on something that they liked. But this particular guy liked bananas. And he said to me, you know, it wouldn't be one banana when he would go home. And he said, do you know what, Kay? My ma says I'm going to overdose on them bananas. And this is somebody who's going out and taking handfuls of drugs. You know, it's funny how the human mind works. You know, he's worried about his, they were lovely people, and I have to say it was an insight. Okay, so how is the Irish consumer protected? Well, we are, slightly, if it was enforced. European Food Safety Authority, which was set up by my Professor Patrick Wall, fabulous man, have enacted health claim legislation. And the same applies to the Food Safety Authority of Ireland, the branch. And the health claim legislation states that if you want to say a food does X, Y, or Z, makes your hair grow long, makes your nails shiny, does whatever, show us the science. And if we're happy with the science, then you can put that on your tin. Yeah, good for your hair, good for your nails, we're happy with that. You see, what we must remember here is that eating is a universal behaviour. We don't all have to drink, we don't have to smoke, we don't have to take drugs, but we all have to eat. And food is highly political. Highly political. So I'm not picking on this company, but this is our famous potted and loan that everybody had to take, and parents were going into the shops and buying it to beat the band, and we were shown our intestines on the telly and the good bugs and the bad bugs. You took this and you were immune from everything. Okay, 44,000 health claims went through. Only 220 of them passed. So really, if you want to say what it is on the tin, it's very difficult. But I think this is very good. It's quite controversial, but I think it's good because consumers now, they can no longer say this is, you know, going to be supporting your immunity and whatever it's supposed to do. Having said that, Danone are doing a great job here. All of the baby food for Europe comes from Ireland, simply because our cows are grass-fed. We have a great fatty acid profile. 15% of the baby food for the whole world, the baby milk, comes from Ireland. So I'm not knocking Danone if anybody works. I just want to touch on this. Vitamin D. Chronically, if I were to take all of your bloods this morning, about 80% of you are chronically lacking in vitamin D. Now in Ireland, every baby born has to take vitamin D drops from birth to 1. However, in the UK, it's from birth to 5. So I'm not quite sure what the difference between a baby in Dundalk is and a baby in Uri. But if I was in Dundalk, I'd be giving my baby vitamin D drops until they're 5. But as I say, every one of us in this room needs to take vitamin D. So that's a take-home message for you. Get on your vitamin D. The new science coming down the line, it is epidemiological in nature, which means that you can't say there's causality, but there's association. The nearer you are to the equator, you will not see psoriasis, you will not see rheumatoid arthritis, MS, lupus, Crohn's, all of those autoimmune illnesses, they're not present around you. The further away you go, so if you go to Scotland, Norway, Ireland, highest rate of autoimmune illness in the world, vitamin D appears to be one of the main drivers. So it's just a tip for you. So this is the Food Ireland, Ireland. And we've had a great reputation up to now. Until we found all the donkeys and the horses in the food. But hopefully it's not that. And in fairness, I'm very, very much for Irish beef. I think it's a fantastic food. Now, I'm not talking about processed, but Irish beef certainly is the best beef in the world. And I think we all need to eat red meat twice a week. So what do you think then would be the number one food consumed in Ireland? So the number one food in Ireland is Coca-Cola, and it has maintained its place for the last 5 years. Number 2 is Avonmore. And number 3 is Lucozade. And it goes on to Tato and Cadbury's and all that good stuff. In that large bottle of Lucozade, there are 21 spoons of sugar. How many people would mindlessly be going home to the garage, get the evening round, a couple of fags and a bottle of Lucozade before the dinner? 21 spoons of sugar. When I was growing up, we had a jug, a butter dish, and a sugar bowl on the table at home. And tablecloth, an oilcloth. You never see what you call a sugar bowl on the tables anymore. It's not required. Food is so adulterated and laced with sugars. So the demon fat. This is blamed for absolutely everything. Get on your low-fat diet. You're going to look great. Cut fats out of your diet. You're going to look fabulous. I say to you, do not get on your low-fat diet and do not cut fats out of your diet. Fat is an essential component. This is driven politically by the food industry. It's so easy for them to remove fats out of the diet. But when they remove fats out of the diet, they are reducing the calorific. So this is what you have to remember, that fats are calorifically higher than sugars. But they're going to give you satiety. That's the difference. So do not buy the low fat. Sorry, what did I do there, Paul? Did I turn it off? Sorry. Sorry about that. Okay, just a hop, skip, and a jump through fats because, you know, we'll be here, I won't be keeping you too long. Basically, the toxic fats are the trans fats. And you can see these guys here, the pastries. In various different countries in the world, they're banned. These are the guys that do stop your heart, cause Alzheimer's, cause hardening of the arteries. We don't have the enzymes to break them down. They're man-made fat. And the good fats then are your monounsaturates, your avocados, your olive oil, your nuts and seeds. And then these are the guys in the saturated fats. They're not that bad. They're not as bad as the press that they get. Okay. So we have a complete lack of essential fats in the Irish diet, and the essential fats are the omega-3 and the omega-6. But in actual fact, we have a huge lack of omega-3 in the diet. So where did this come from? Well, back when the heart disease epidemic was in the 60s and 70s in America, and they did the autopsies, and they said, oh, hey, bingo, there's this waxy, fatty substance in the arteries. We've identified it. It's called cholesterol. And it is made by saturated fats. So they took all the saturated fats out of the diet and they put in all the plant fats, which caused a different problem, and heart disease was not rectified. At the same time, this Professor John Dyberg was professor of epidemiology, and he decided to look at the Eskimos. What he discovered with the Eskimos was there was no heart disease, none whatsoever. Yet these guys had no vegetables, no fruit, no grain, lived in darkness most of the year, and literally their diet was blubber, seal blubber. The amount of fat they ate was 70% of their diet. And that was where they isolated the fat called omega-3, which is chronically lacking in the Irish diet. Another thing chronically lacking is fibre. 3 out of 4 Irish people don't eat sufficient fibre. Okay? So what's your most important start to the day? It's your breakfast. It's your breakfast. I am not a fan of cereals. With the exception of porridge, I am absolutely not a fan of cereals. I just know what's in them. And they will not sustain you, they will not fill you, and you will not get satiety. So what's the perfect food for your breakfast? The egg. And just let me say to you, there is no association between cholesterol and eggs. That's old science, it's bad science. You can eat, I eat 2 eggs every day. You can eat 20 if you want per week. No association whatsoever. So if you don't have your breakfast, you typically have your coffee and your croissant and your coffee and your bag or your coffee and your coffee. And if you're working with women who come in without their breakfast and they're having their coffee and then another coffee, and by 12 o'clock stay out of the way, it's going to take them clean off you because it just doesn't suit our metabolism. We need to have breakfast, we need to eat. It's not good for us, we get cranky. Our hormones. Sorry, girls. But that's the reality. So, you know, You know what they say about women bosses, make sure they're full. So by 3 o'clock in the day, here's what you've got, you know. And you know this whole new area now that we're focusing in on, presenteeism. So that the employee who shows up well dressed, well talked down, smile on their face, but they're absent. They're not really with you. Presenteeism, they're there but they're not with you. Okay, snacking and hydration, very, very, very important. You need to eat 3 meals every day, and you need to eat 2 healthy. So you need something mid-morning to keep your sugars up, and you need something in the afternoon. And people that are getting up and, you know, oh, I go all day, I'm great, I keep going all day, and then at night I eat. Very, very, very bad idea. You need to refuel, you need to get plenty of pit stops. So the 5-day message, very important. But in fact, Harvard School of Public Health would tell us we need 9 a day. The average Irish person has how much? 2 a day. 2 a day. That's what the average Irish person has, 2 a day. And it is a simple, fundamental strategy that we get more veg into the diet. I'm conscious of time, so I'm speeding it up. So what have I done for my most valuable asset today? Who says that to themselves when they get up or go to bed at night? One person. You get the lollipop in the end. What have I done for my most valuable asset today? How have I spoken to myself? How have I let stress? What's going on in my mind? Is my mind running me? Am I running it? So this is where I go every morning, the beach on Dunwich. That's what I do for my most valuable asset every day, out on the beach. So health, the promotion of health is a process of enabling people to increase control over and to improve their own health. Obviously we haven't time to go into the whole area of exercise, but if you don't make time for exercise, you will need to make time for it. Don't become a statistic.